So you're here today to give a lecture. Can you give us a brief summary on what it's going to include, what's it about?
Well, it's called The Team Behind the Team. It's nothing kind of too intellectual. It's really just trying to reflect on what a great Olympic and Paralympic Games we had. And I think for most people it might have come as a bit of a surprise, the success that the team had and generally how successful the Games were. So I'm just kind of going to give a little bit of background as to how it wasn't a surprise, it was planned, and the things that have happened in Olympic sport over the last sort of 10-12 years.
So we're 3 months on now from the Olympics. At what point can we begin to measure the success?
It depends on how you want to measure it. I think the amount of medals we won and the successful hosting of the Games is something that is kind of there in forever, if you like, not to change that. I mean, people will look back on these Games. I think certainly most people that I spoke to, is probably one of the greatest Games there's ever been. I think the other bit of it is a bit more difficult going forward, which is about what legacy does it leave, that horrible L word that people have talked about, and how many kids get involved in sport, whether or not even the feel-good factor that was around in the country, if you like, how people were sort of treating each other, talking to each other. Does that? I mean, I'm not sure that's even lasted 2-3 months, but it's those sort of issues, the sort of softer issues, which are a bit more difficult to measure. But I think as an Olympic Games, when you enter into the sort of contract with the IOC to host the Games, London delivered everything that the IOC and the IPC would have wanted.
Okay, so this legacy, how do you think we're prepared enough for the explosion of interest in minority sports? Do you think we're prepared?
Well, I think that's the area which I think there's probably most opportunity in terms of creating new interest. There's a lot of those sports that got a shop window they would never normally have, and you're right, there's lots of youngsters who've thought, well, hang on, taekwondo or canoe slalom or women's boxing, whatever it might be, rather than just always looking at football and rugby and cricket sort of thing. And I think a lot of those sports were gearing up and were hoping that was going to happen. I guess the proof of that is going to be a little bit further down the line, is to see whether we get more champions coming through in those sports, if you like. But anecdotally, so far, what I've been told is exactly that, is that some of those sports have seen a massive uplift in terms of the amount of youngsters coming along to see what it's all about.
Okay, so what would you say to aspiring athletes? Do you think the work ethic is more important than the talent, or...?
Yes, I think to answer your question fairly straightforwardly, there's lots of people with talent. I think sometimes people hide behind the talent and think, oh, if only, my experience, and actually something I'll talk a little bit about tonight, is that it's actually the hard work that sets people apart. It's that years of training and having a desire, and day after day, and you end up somewhere like the Olympic Games or the Paralympic Games. It's not the sort of environment where someone who's got a lot of natural ability but doesn't want to work with it is ever going to succeed. They'll get so far, and then they're just going to get passed by the people who are really putting the effort in. And that's something which I don't think has ever really changed. It's just that sometimes people don't quite make that connection, because it sounds better to have an excuse that, oh, I could have been great, I just wasn't as talented as him. Well, most of the time it's not the talent that gets people to the top.
Okay. And those who've already made it, who do you think is going to win Sports Personality of the Year? Do you think it's going to be an athlete?
That's a really difficult question. I mean, in any other year, probably any one of 4 or 5 of these people would walk it. Andy Murray, he's won the US Open. In any other year, you'd be a shoo-in. Rory McIlroy won one of the majors early on in the year, and then of course did well in the Ryder Cup. Again, in any other year. But then, the impact of the Olympics and the Paralympics, and you look at all the people who did so well. The difficult thing is going to be, first of all, getting a short list of 10. That's just going to be hard enough. And then once you get that short list, I guess it's up to the public then. I'd hope that Mo Farah, Jess Ennis in particular, are right up there. David Weir, one of our top Paralympians, of course. But that's too hard to call. It'll probably come down to who has the best campaign, because I think that's what it's about these days, isn't it? Who goes on enough chat shows and kind of gets their name out there in those 3 or 4 weeks leading up to it.